Krishna Rao Garu to come and speak, also to take the event further. He's the right person actually. Can we have a round of applause? Honorable Judge Narasimha Garu is presenting the first copies of The Quintessential Rebel to the dignitaries. Ramachandra Murthy Garu, please do come to the stage, Andi.
Before I request Honorable Justice Narasimha Garu to address the gathering, I wanted to brief Justice Narasimha Garu. Along with Justice Lalit, Justice Ravindra Bhatt and Justice PS Narasimha have developed is the new jurisprudence in the death penalty. Mitigation as an important aspect to be considered in commuting the death penalty to the life imprisonment. I think this jurisprudence they have been developing. Hopefully, it would reach to much more important milestone. Maybe we will start in the Indian constitutional history the progressive step towards abolition of death penalty. And we look forward to many interesting judgments in the coming years, so I don't want to cite any of this. And I therefore request Honorable Justice PS Narasimha Garu, please address the gathering.
I really don't know in what capacity I would really be reviewing this book. Not as a journalist, definitely. Not as a judge, not as a lawyer or a critical political analyst. But I think every citizen knows the way Shri PV Narasimha Rao Garu had been in the public forum, be it in the opposition or be it in the government. My analysis or my understanding is not so much about the way he handled political scenario, but somehow I have tried to understand him as a person from what I gathered from my friends, from what I read it from the newspaper, or how he reacted to certain important issues. I think everybody will agree that he was not a charismatic person. And I think there is a reason for that. And he consciously cultivated it. He worked upon it. Because I think he knew that it was actually ephemeral. And he therefore shifted his focus on deep thinking and proper adhyayanam, so to say, of the system, the political system. A.Krishna Rao Garu, as I would like to call him, I should congratulate you for penning down. It was initially in Telugu. And నేను తెలుగులో ఉన్నదే ఎక్కువ చదివాను ఇంగ్లీష్లో కంటే, because that was the original book that you had written. And wishing you to write some more and more deeper than political, because I'll conclude with this. These are people who are typically to be called as shreshtas. And the path that they take is the path that people would follow. Yadyadataridi shreshtaha tatta deve tarojana. So therefore, they leave the mark, and very clearly in the present world, even before anybody says anything, we have an opinion being expressed. With the Twitter world, with the SMS world, we know where we are. Even before we utter a word, it's all over the. So therefore, the restraint of speech. This thought came to me, I should share with it. The most essential part of the present existence is the restraint of speech, which has completely vanished from the narrative world. Is it necessary to give an opinion on everything? And this is where he is the greatest person who has given us the way to lead public life. Restraint in speech.
Members of the family of Mr. PV Narasimha Rao. That's all right, I'll hold it. KVP and other friends who are present here. When Mr. Krishna Rao asked me about 9 months back before I retired that I have to release a book, I asked him, why me? What have I got to do with the former Prime Minister? Then he roped in Justice Narasimha also. The question is, why us? Are we relevant here? Then I asked him, why are you writing about Mr. PV Narasimha Rao? Then he said that a great man had been ignored in this country. A person who should have been talked about a lot has not been talked about at all. He has been completely ignored. He was telling me in the evening today about one book that was written by an accomplished writer where he spoke about 100 persons who have changed the history of India, and even in that he didn't mention this name of Mr. PV Narasimha Rao. So unfortunate. So he felt that Mr. PV Narasimha Rao has to get his due. And that's the reason why he had written this book. He didn't favor me with the Telugu version like he did to Justice Narasimha. He gave me the English version, I read this. And initially I thought that we would be reading about Mr. PV Narasimha Rao's life and his achievements. But when you read this book, you find that he would not have written anything what was spoken just now. He has given an inside view of a prime minister, a person who had to really toil hard all his life, and a person who became a prime minister after so many machinations which were there to stop him from becoming a prime minister. The trouble that he had heading a minority government for about 5 years without any problems, an astute politician as he was. He also wrote about his knowledge of various subjects, including foreign affairs. And most importantly, a person who has changed the history of India. There are events in history which have really changed the track of where the country should go. Insofar as judiciary is concerned, there were historic judgments where fundamental rights were protected. There are judgments where the Supreme Court said that fundamental rights cannot be suspended. And another event which has turned the history of India is the election of Indira Gandhi, which election was set aside by the Allahabad High Court, which led to the emergency in this country and then led to another course in history. This is because of the involvement of the courts. Likewise, people and persons like Mr. PV Narasimha Rao are great people. They have shifted the course of this country from a situation where we were in deficit of about $2 billion in the early 1991s. Now the IMF says that we are looking at about $5.6 trillion by 2027. That's going to be the value of our economy. And all this is due to the vision of one person, and that is Mr. PV Narasimha Rao. So Mr. Krishna Rao writes about all this. And one thing which has to be said about this book is, Mr. Krishna Rao has been very frank in this book. Wherever he felt that there were certain things which were wrong, which were committed at that point of time, he has said, yes, these were certain things which happened at that point of time. And every person would want to know as to what happens behind corridors. I have a number of lawyer friends who used to ask me, how is it behind the corridors of the Supreme Court, that side of the Supreme Court? What is it that judges speak? What is it that they do when they deliver judgments? How is it that they work? Inquisitiveness of trying to find out as to what people are doing. So now in this book, this inquisitiveness of people as to what exactly happened, which was not known to public, is there. So this will make a very good reading. I appreciate Krishna Rao's effort, though both of us might not be relevant here as what we were speaking about, but there is something common between both of us and Mr. PV Narasimha Rao. He was a lawyer, like us. So I was just asking Mr. Krishna Rao whether he practiced law. So I was told that he practiced law for a short period of time before plunging into politics. So there is definitely nothing uncommon. We are all from the legal fraternity. And the most important thing which I wanted to speak about, which I read from your book, is about the interaction of Mr. PV Narasimha Rao with Venkatachalaya, who was the Chief Justice when he was the Prime Minister. It seems he went to Venkatachalaya. I was also there in Visakhapatnam when Venkatachalaya was speaking about it. Mr. PV Narasimha Rao went for the swearing-in ceremony of Mr. Venkatachalaya when he became the Chief Justice and said that we are going to be friends now. Mr. Venkatachalaya told him that we can never be friends. You are the Prime Minister, I am the Chief Justice. But then Mr. PV Narasimha Rao said, we'll work together, we'll keep meeting. I said, that's good. I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that even in restatement of values of judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court, and even Matthew Hale, about 400 years back, he gave about 20 principles which have to be followed by judges. We are all asked to stay away from politicians. If judges and the executive, they rub shoulders, then it is the citizen who is going to suffer. That's the reason why Venkatachalaya told Mr. PV Narasimha Rao, you can't be friends. See, we are seen to be the least dangerous branch in the three wings of the government, because the courts do not have the army nor the purse. But there is a criticism against the courts that we are counter-majoritarian. We are not elected by people, but we are there trying to protect the rights of the citizens against the mighty executive. That's the reason why Venkatachalaya said that we cannot be friends. But Venkatachalaya, when he was speaking in Visakhapatnam, delivering the PV Narasimha Rao lecture, which was conducted by Lakshmi Prasad, for about 10 minutes he praised PV Narasimha Rao. He knew him so closely, but by virtue of his employment, he said we can't be friends, but he was highly appreciative of the person. There are persons who are forgotten. There are persons who have really turned the course of history who are not talked about. And I congratulate Krishna Rao for at least making us go through the life of Mr. PV Narasimha Rao and what all he achieved, which is a lesson to all the youngsters in this country.
అనుమతితో నేను తెలుగులో మాట్లాడతాను. ముందుగా ఈ మా శర్మ అంటే ఏంటని అడిగారు అధ్యక్షుల వారు. మా శర్మ అంటే మాచవరం వెంకట చెంచురామ మారుతి సుబ్బరాయ శర్మ. మాది ఆయన రిలీఫ్ ఫీల్ అయ్యారు. ఆ రిలీఫ్ కోసమే అంత చిన్న పేరు పెట్టుకున్నాను. కొప్పరపు సోదర కోవిల్లో పెద్దవారైన వెంకట సుబ్బరాయ గారు మా మాతామహులు. ఆయన పేరు మా నాన్నగారి పేరు చెంచురామయ్య. ఆంజనేయ స్వామి వరప్రసాదంగా పెళ్ళైన 30 ఏళ్ళ తర్వాత పుట్టాను కాబట్టి మారుతి అన్నీ కలిపి వెంకట చెంచురామ మారుతి సుబ్బరాయ శర్మ అయ్యాను. మాచవరం ఇంటి పేరు. నా ప్రవర్ అయిపోయింది. అందరూ అందరే మరియు అందరూ అందరే అందరు అందరే అంటాడు శ్రీనాథుడు. వేదిక పైన కింద ఉన్నవారందరూ అందరికీ నా వందనాలు సమర్పిస్తున్నాను. పివి నరసింహారావు గారు అనగానే స్థితప్రజ్ఞుడు, కర్మయోగి, జ్ఞానయోగి, విప్లవ తపస్వి, రాజనీతిజ్ఞుడు, అపర చాణక్యుడు, ఇలా ఎన్ని విశేషాలనైనా వాడచ్చు. తిమ్మరుసు, తిక్కన, చాణక్యుడు కలిస్తే పివి నరసింహారావు గారు అవుతారని నా భావన. తిక్కన మహాకవి, మహామంత్రి మరియు దండనాథుడు, అంటే చీఫ్ మార్షల్. ఆ విధంగా పివి నరసింహారావు గారిలో కవి ఉన్నాడు, మహామంత్రి ఉన్నాడు. ఆయనే మంత్రి, ఆయనే రాజు. ఆయన రాజు, మంత్రి 2 పదవులు చేసిన వాడు పివి నరసింహారావు గారు. అలాగే తిమ్మరుసుకు పీవీకున్న సారూప్యత ఏంటంటే శ్రీకృష్ణదేవరాయలని ఆ స్థానంలో కూర్చోబెట్టడానికి, ఆ రాజ్యాన్ని కాపాడడానికి దేశభక్తితో, రాజ్యభక్తితో, ప్రభుభక్తితో వ్యవహరించి త్యాగం చేసి చివరికి ఆయనకు ముగింపు ఎంత ఘోరంగా జరిగిందో మనకు తెలిసిందే తిమ్మరుసుది. ఆ విధంగా పివి నరసింహారావు గారు ఇందిరాగాంధీ కుటుంబాని కోసం, దేశం కోసం దేశభక్తితో వ్యవహరించి మంత్రిత్వాన్ని, తన సకల జ్ఞాన సంపదని దేశం కోసం, ప్రభు కోసం వెచ్చించిన వారు పివి నరసింహారావు గారు. ఆ విధంగా తిమ్మరుసుకి పివి గారికి అనుబంధం ఉంది, సారూప్యత ఉంది. తిక్కనకి పివి గారికి సారూప్యత ఉంది. చాణక్యుడు ఎలా ఉంటాడో, కౌటిల్యుడు ఎలా ఉంటాడో మన అర్థశాస్త్రం చదువుకోవడం తప్పితే దాన్ని ఆచరణలో చూపించిన వారు పివి నరసింహారావు గారు. అలాగే భగవద్గీతలో కర్మయోగి అంటారు. కర్మయోగి చదవటానికి, వినటానికి బాగుంటుంది. స్థితప్రజ్ఞత చెప్పుకోవడానికి చాలా బాగుంటుంది. స్థితప్రజ్ఞత అంటే ఎలా ఉంటుందో ఎంబాడిమెంటే పివి నరసింహారావు గారు. ఒక కవిగారు పివి గారి గురించి ఇలా అంటారు: పెదవిన్ విప్పడు ఎవ్వరేమి అనినన్, ప్రేమన్ విలోకించు ఏ పదవిన్ కోరడు, తానుగా వలచినన్ భద్రమ్ముగా గాచుతాన్. 14 భాషలను చదివి శబ్ద ప్రౌఢి నిశ్శబ్దుడే, పివి 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 భారతదేశపు టీవీ చదువులమ్మ చెమ్మోవి అన్నారు. ఇందరు పెద్దలున్న ఈ వేదిక పైన పివి గారి కుటుంబంతో, పివి గారితో మాకు చాలా అనుబంధం ఉంది. 2002లో కొప్పరపకోల పీఠాన్ని నేను స్థాపిస్తే కొప్పరపకోల సాహిత్యాన్ని పీఠం ద్వారా మొట్టమొదటి ప్రచురణని పివి నరసింహారావు గారు 2004 ఢిల్లీ నుంచి ప్రత్యేకంగా వచ్చి ఆవిష్కరించారు. పరమాద్భుతమైన ప్రసంగం చేశారు. వేదిక పైన భద్రాద్రి కృష్ణమూర్తి గారు, జీవి సుబ్రహ్మణ్యం గారు, పొత్తూరు వెంకటేశ్వర గారు వీళ్ళందరూ ఉన్నారు. భద్రాద్రి కృష్ణమూర్తి గారు అంటే ప్రపంచంలోని భాషా శాస్త్రవేత్తలు 4-5లో ఒకరు, భారతదేశంలో శిఖరం. పివి నరసింహారావు గారు భాషాశాస్త్రం గురించి మాట్లాడుతుంటే సింహళి లిపికి, తెలుగు లిపికి ఉన్న అనుబంధము, సారూప్యత, అలాగే భాషలు, మన విద్యా విధానము, అవధాన ప్రజ్ఞ, తెలుగువాడి జ్ఞాపక శక్తి, ఇవన్నీ మాట్లాడుతుంటే అందరూ ఆశ్చర్యపోవడం తప్ప ఇంకేం చేయలేకపోయారు. అటు పివి నరసింహారావు గారు, పివి నరసింహారావు గారి కవిగా కూడా, సాహిత్యవేత్తగా కూడా ఒక చాప్టర్ విప్లవ తపస్సులో తెలుగులో తీసుకొచ్చిన దాంట్లో కృష్ణారావు గారు ఆవిష్కరించారు. శ్రీనివాస్ గారు ఇంగ్లీష్లో దాన్ని అనువదించారు. శ్రీనివాస్ గారు అంటే అగస్త్య భ్రాత కాదు, అన్నకు తగ్గ తమ్ముడు. కాబట్టి శ్రీనివాస్ గారిని కూడా మనం అభినందించి తీరాలి. ది క్వింటెసెన్షియల్ రెబెల్ అని ఇంగ్లీష్లో ట్రాన్స్లేట్ చేశారు. ఆ పేరు మన రామచంద్రమూర్తి గారు సూచించారు. రామచంద్రమూర్తి గారికి మన కృతజ్ఞత చెబుతూ సెలవు తీసుకుంటాను. నమస్కారం.
నాగేశ్వరరావు గారు, నరసింహ గారు, మిత్రులు ఆన్ ద డయాస్, రాఘవేంద్రరావు గారు, కృష్ణారావు గారు, మా శర్మ గారు, కృష్ణదేవరావు గారు, and all esteemed friends and distinguished editors and relatives of Mr. PV Narasimha Rao, including his son, my good friend Prabhakar. Thanks very much for giving me this opportunity to come to Hyderabad and talk about Mr. Narasimha Rao. I would like to talk about the foreign policy that Narasimha Rao conducted as the Prime Minister of India. Before that, let me just say I first met Mr. Narasimha Rao in Medak when he accompanied Mrs. Indira Gandhi along with Channa Reddy, Neduramali Janardhan Reddy and other people when she came to file her nomination to the Lok Sabha constituency in 1979. Then thereafter, I have been in regular touch with Mr. Narasimha Rao while he was the the foreign minister, subsequently as the prime minister. I used to meet him fairly regularly. As the foreign minister, I would go to him, and once I asked him, why did Mrs. Gandhi choose you as the foreign minister? He said, soon after the elections got over, she called me one day and she said, Narasimha Rao ji, I looked around for a suitable candidate to be the foreign minister of India, but I could not find anybody except you. Then he told me, he said to Mrs. Gandhi, Madam, but I am a vegetarian. I don't drink. I don't travel much. I don't like to travel much. So, I don't think I'm going to enjoy this job. He said, no, I think you are the most suitable person among my colleagues to be the foreign minister of India. So I think his work as the foreign minister of India and his travels around the world, meeting with the leaders and visits to the United Nations and different parts of the world, have helped him a great deal when he became the prime minister. And when he was the prime minister, I had an opportunity to travel with him twice to the United States. I also went to Iran, Malaysia, Switzerland, Davos, and Germany, several other countries. So even after he became the prime minister, he was accessible. If you just called up his home office and said, I would like to come and see him, and he would give time. And that was one of the reasons why I was fascinated by the man. He was so humble, simple, unpretentious, and I think it was a deliberate choice for him to keep a low profile. As Tang Xiaoping said, how does it matter whether a cat is black or white, so long as it catches mice? So his aim was to deliver the goods. And he came to power at a time when Indian economy was in a mess. We had less than $1 billion as foreign exchange reserves, not enough to buy what we need for more than 3 weeks. Today, we have more than $560 billion. I think third or fourth country with that kind of foreign exchange reserves. The thing about Narasimha Rao was that he came to become the Prime Minister of India because he was the least controversial person. Sharad Pawar and Arjun Singh were breathing down his neck. They were wanting to become the Prime Minister after Rajiv's assassination. But they did not have enough backing of members of Parliament. And they said, okay, let this man be the Prime Minister for some time. When our time comes, we will topple him and take over. Then he had Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, who was not exactly very fond of him. So he had to cope with so many internal, machinations. And so he had to make every move with great, great thought. And in the process, he ended up making history. He undertook revolutionary steps to fix the economy. And he dispensed with the license Raj. And today, if we are the 5th largest economy, we are going to be the 3rd largest next year or so. We are going to be $5 trillion GDP in the next couple of years. It is primarily because of the revolutionary reforms introduced by Mr. PV Narasimha Rao. The credit must be given to him. It does not matter if some small-minded people in the Congress party do not like him and they did not allow his dead body to be kept in the Congress office in Delhi, which was disgraceful. That only shows how small-minded those people are, and it does not, affect the greatness of PV Narasimha Rao. No, I think the time when he became the Prime Minister of India, of course, there were economic problems in India, but internationally, the collapse of the Soviet Union, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the end of the Cold War, created a situation where you only ended up with the United States as the only superpower, and the Soviet Union collapsed and became 15, independent states. So Mr. Rao had to adopt certain devices to befriend the Americans, because Americans were very cold towards India as long as the Soviet Union was in existence. They thought India was Soviet Union's lackey. They kept their distance from India. But the efforts Mr. Rao made by going to the United States, going to other parts of Europe, and going to China, and keeping Pakistan at a distance while talking to them, I think the results that were produced were absolutely amazing. He realized that the border dispute with China cannot be resolved easily. So he made a visit to China and signed the Peace and Tranquility Agreement, which, in a manner of speaking, de-hyphenated the border problem with other aspects of our relations with China. As a result, today, China's trade with India bilaterally is $115 billion. It was less than $2 billion when Mr. Rao became the Prime Minister. America today, while it was cold towards India when Mr. Rao took office, but after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the efforts made by Narasimha Rao, he made 2 visits to the United States. I happened to travel with him on those 2 historic trips. And he, addressed the US Congress. I was present there when he addressed the press conference with Clinton in the White House. I happened to be there. So the point I'm trying to make is that he brought about a revolutionary change in America's attitude towards India. And he also kept the nuclear program going, but when the Americans got wind of possible explosion of nuclear Pokhran 2, he delayed it, but he told the scientists to carry on and waited till Vajpayee became the Prime Minister and told him, Samagri Tayyar hai. You go ahead and do it. That's how Pokhran 2, the multiple nuclear test, was done in 1998. But by then, India was economically strong enough to withstand sanctions, and Clinton made a historic visit to India, followed by several other heads of government and state who kept visiting India, and it was all over. So I think history will judge Narasimha Rao kindly, because he presided over India at a point of time which was very critical and crucial in the history of the world as well as India. And the Look East policy, which he initiated, which had tremendous outcome. We now have more than $90 billion bilateral trade with the ASEAN region, which is, if any of you have visited ASEAN countries, and if you visited their museums, sometimes you wonder whether you are in India or in another country. Because the statues you see in the National Museum or in the Asiatic Museum in Calcutta, you find them in museums in Jakarta and other places in ASEAN. And it was a master stroke on the part of Narasimha Rao that he decided to look east. Now it is Act East. And it has had a tremendous impact on India's relations with the ASEAN region. And today, if India is boasting that we are going to be the third largest economy in the world, and if we are president of the G20, we are hosting the SCO, International Solar Alliance, you have become a global player on the global stage. And everybody who is somebody in global politics makes it a point to come to New Delhi. So India, New Delhi is the unofficial capital of not just the global south, but the whole world, I would say, because no US president since Clinton has left office not visiting India. Mr. Biden will be coming here in September to attend the G20 summit. All this shows the increase in India's global influence, but the foundation stone for that was laid by PV Narasimha Rao, and the credit must go to him. And I'm very happy that my friend Krishna Rao has taken pains to chronicle Narasimha Rao's life as a politician, and he wrote a great deal about it, and he invited me to write a foreword to that. I contributed that. And so on this happy occasion, I want to congratulate Krishna Rao and his brother Srinivas, who translated that book into English from Telugu, and the honorable judges and Raghavendra Rao Garu, the publisher, and all of you for coming. Thank you very much.